In the early hours of the 17th of April 1967, Ghana was shaken by an audacious attempt to overthrow the ruling government. A group of junior officers of the Ghana Armed Forces, led by Lieutenant Samuel Arthur, Lieutenant Moses Yaboa, and Second Lieutenant Osei Poku, launched a coup codenamed Operation Guitar Boy. Their motive was simple but dangerous. They believed the country had drifted off course under the new rulers, and that bold action by soldiers like them could reset Ghana. Before dawn, Accra was in confusion. Radios crackled, orders clashed, and units moved without clear command. In the middle of it was Major General Emmanuel Kotoka, one of the most powerful figures in the military government. Near the airport area, he was confronted by the rebels. Shots were fired. Within minutes, Kotoka was down, killed in the chaos he was trying to contain. But the story of Kotoka is bigger than his final minutes. Emmanuel Kwasi Kotoka was born on the 26th of September 1926 in the small village of Alakple in the Keta district of the British Gold Coast, today's Volta region of Ghana. He grew up in a humble coastal household, with his father working as a fisherman and his mother as a trader in the coastal community. Kotoka's early life was grounded in faith and discipline. By 1941, he had completed his basic schooling, and like many young men of his time, he initially looked to the church for a career. He trained to become a Catholic teacher catechist and even worked briefly as a teacher. But after only 9 months, he changed paths. In 1942, still in search of his true calling, Kotoka turned to goldsmithing. He applied himself with determination, and by January 1947, he had qualified as a professional goldsmith. However, financial hardship and limited opportunities made it impossible for him to continue in the craft. Abandoning goldsmithing, Kotoka set his sights on a new path, one that would lead him into the military. In July 1947, at the age of 20, Kotoka enlisted as a private in the Gold Coast Regiment of the British Colonial Army. He began his training at the infantry school in Teshi, near Accra, where he was responsible for drilling illiterate recruits, a task he performed diligently. Kotoka's leadership qualities quickly became evident. By 1948, he had risen to the rank of sergeant, and 3 years later, he became a company sergeant major. His superiors identified him as an outstanding soldier, and by November 1954, he was commissioned as a lieutenant. He was then sent to West Germany, where he gained further experience with the British Army of the Rhine. Kotoka returned to the Gold Coast in early 1955 as a newly minted officer, ready to serve in a transitioning nation edging toward independence. He was appointed a platoon commander in the 2nd Gold Coast Regiment, and his ascent through the ranks continued steadily. In September 1961, he achieved the temporary rank of lieutenant colonel and took command of the 2nd Infantry Battalion. Around this time, Ghana, which had achieved independence in 1957, became involved in international peacekeeping under the United Nations. Kotoka played a prominent role in these missions. In mid-1960, as a major, he commanded D Company of Ghana's 2nd Battalion, which was deployed to the Republic of the Congo as part of the United Nations Operation in the Congo. Stationed in the Congolese capital of Leopoldville, now Kinshasa, Kotoka's unit was tasked with guarding the national radio station during a tense period of turmoil in which Congo's Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba, and President Joseph Kasavubu were locked in a power struggle. In 1962, Kotoka led Ghanaian troops in the breakaway province of Katanga, where secessionist leader Moise Tshombe was attempting to carve out an independent state with the support of foreign mercenaries and mining interests. Kotoka distinguished himself in action at an important military air base in Kema, and for his valor in the Congo campaign, he was awarded the Ghana Service Order for exceptional bravery in 1963. Despite his relatively young age, Kotoka had become one of the rising stars of the Ghanaian military establishment. However, at the same time, Ghana's internal politics were growing more turbulent, and the military itself was being drawn into the fray. Kotoka would soon find himself at the crossroads of these political upheavals. Ghana in the early 1960s was under the charismatic but increasingly authoritarian leadership of President Kwame Nkrumah. In August 1962, Nkrumah narrowly escaped death in a grenade attack at Kulungugu in northern Ghana. after which he grew ever more distrustful of potential rivals, including elements within his own armed forces. He created an elite, Soviet-trained Presidential Guard regiment, loyal only to him, and began to sideline or remove officers he deemed untrustworthy. As Quartermaster General of the Army in 1962, Kotoka was directly involved in dealing with the logistical and organizational challenges posed by this new Guard regiment. He opposed Nkrumah's decision to elevate the president's own Guard regiment into a full-fledged field unit separate from the regular army, seeing it as a breach of proper military procedure and a step toward turning the army into a politicized tool of the regime. This stance put Kotoka at odds with Nkrumah's inner circle. By 1964, mutters of discontent within the military and police had coalesced into a secret plot against Nkrumah's government. One of the early conspirators was John Willie Kofi Harley, the Inspector General of Police, who confided his intentions to Kotoka that year. Kotoka agreed to cooperate with Harley, sharing the belief that Nkrumah's increasingly autocratic rule and economic mismanagement were steering Ghana in the wrong direction. However, attempts to stage a coup in early 1965 did not materialize. The conspirators struggled to win over Major General Stephen Otu, the Chief of Defense Staff, who remained loyal to Nkrumah. Likewise, other senior officers were wary of treason, so Kotoka and his compatriots realized they might have to rely on more junior officers to carry out any takeover. In July 1965, Kotoka was transferred out of Accra, possibly by Nkrumah's design, to become commander of the Army's 2nd Infantry Brigade, based in Kumasi in the Ashanti region. This move, however, proved fateful in an unexpected way. In Kumasi, Kotoka became close friends with Major Kwasi Afrifa, a bright young officer serving as his brigade major. Afrifa harbored his own grievances against the regime and soon joined Kotoka's growing conspiracy. Together with Harley and a handful of others, they started crafting a plan to topple Nkrumah. By late 1965, they decided to act at the earliest opportune moment. President Nkrumah's foreign policy inadvertently handed the plotters a cover for their clandestine preparations. In late 1965, Nkrumah announced that Ghana would contribute troops to an African force to fight against the white minority government in Rhodesia, today's Zimbabwe. He ordered the military into a state of readiness. Kotoka astutely used this mobilization as a pretext to reposition troops and conduct exercises near Accra, thereby moving forces into place under the guise of training for Rhodesia. All the while, Nkrumah's security apparatus remained unaware that these maneuvers were part of a coup plan. Timing was critical. The conspirators agreed they would act when Nkrumah was outside the country, to minimize resistance and avoid unnecessary bloodshed. In February 1966, an opportunity arose. Nkrumah departed on a high-profile trip to Asia, with stops in Beijing and Hanoi on a peace mission related to the Vietnam War. The plotters set the coup for dawn on February 24, 1966, just days after Nkrumah's departure. Kotoka also understood that success hinged on neutralizing the military commanders in Accra, who were not yet in the know. He managed to secretly convince Colonel A.K. Akron, the commanding officer of the 1st Brigade in Accra, to join the conspiracy at the 11th hour. Furthermore, they roped in a respected retired Army officer, Major General Joseph Arthur Ankra, as a figurehead to lead the new government once Nkrumah was ousted. Ankra, who had been involuntarily retired by Nkrumah months earlier, was seen as a popular and stabilizing choice to front the regime, since Kotoka and Harley preferred to wield power from behind the scenes rather than serve as head of state. At approximately 6 a.m. on 24 February 1966, Kotoka and his co-conspirators struck, executing what they had codenamed Operation Cold Chop. Major Afrifa led a contingent of soldiers to seize key installations in the capital, including the broadcasting house of the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. Once the radio station was secured, Kotoka made a dawn broadcast to the nation announcing that the military and police had taken over the government in order to save the country from economic chaos and one-party tyranny. This radio address was the first that most Ghanaians heard of the coup, and it signaled that the long-feared and long-rumored takeover was a reality. Around the same time, loyalist resistance was being quelled. At Flagstaff House, Nkrumah's official residence and the seat of government, fighting broke out between the coup makers and the president's own guard regiment, who initially resisted the insurgents. A brief gun battle ensued, resulting in a few casualties on both sides. However, with Nkrumah himself absent abroad and many of his loyalists surprised and disorganized, the standoff did not last long. By midday, the Guard Regiment laid down their arms and surrendered, effectively sealing the success of the coup in Accra. Meanwhile, Nkrumah, who was still in Asia at the time, was left a president in exile, cut off from home and effectively ousted without a chance to marshal any response. Although he had led Ghana to independence and was revered by many across Africa, when news broke that his government had been overthrown, crowds in Accra and other cities erupted in celebration. In the aftermath, an 8-man junta of military and police officers called the National Liberation Council was formed to govern Ghana. The council was headed formally by General Ankara as chairman, but true power was shared among the key architects of the coup. Kotoka, who was immediately promoted from lieutenant colonel to major general on the day of the coup, took a seat on the NLC as the member in charge of the Ghana Armed Forces. He was appointed general officer commanding the army, effectively putting him in charge of the entire Ghanaian military. For a time, he also served concurrently as Minister for Health in the new regime. Other NLC members included Police Inspector J.W.K. Harley, who became Minister for Foreign Affairs and Deputy Chairman of the NLC, Brigadier Kwasi Afrifa, Colonel A.K. Akran, and 2 other senior police commissioners and army officers, balancing the council between 4 soldiers and 4 police officials. Notably, evidence later emerged that external powers had some awareness of the brewing plot against Nkrumah. Declassified U.S. intelligence documents indicate that the CIA and other Western agencies had been informed about the conspiracy at least a year in advance. A memorandum from the U.S. National Security Council in 1965 noted, "The plotters are keeping us briefed. While we're not directly involved, I'm told, we and other Western countries have been helping to set up the situation by ignoring Nkrumah's pleas for economic aid. All in all, it looks good." This and other evidence suggest that while the coup was locally led, it was tacitly welcomed by Western governments, uncomfortable with Nkrumah's socialist and Pan-African orientation. Indeed, Ghana's new NLC government quickly aligned itself with the West, implementing economic austerity measures and liberalization policies recommended by the International Monetary Fund and World Bank. As a member of the ruling National Liberation Council, General Kotoka wielded significant influence in the governance of Ghana. Within the NLC's collective leadership, he was regarded as representing the interests of the military, especially the younger officers who had supported the coup. He took his new responsibilities seriously and was outspoken about the reforms he felt Ghana needed. Kotoka advocated for the eradication of corruption and the overhaul of the state administration, seeing these as necessary to reverse the failures of Nkrumah's regime. He was particularly adamant that the politicians of the ousted Convention People's Party, Nkrumah's party, should be barred from ever returning to power. In Kotoka's view, CPP officials had abused power and mismanaged the country, so the NLC promptly passed decrees to disqualify leading CPP figures from holding public office, and even detained many without trial.
How is the reconstruction of the country going since the overthrow of the Nkrumah regime?
I think very well indeed. It's going very well. Everybody is working hard, and we hope it won't be long when things will be on a good footing.
Returning to ex-President Nkrumah, do you think he'll ever try to return to Ghana?
We'll be very pleased indeed to have him back in Ghana, and we'll give him the red carpet.
Thank you, sir.
Despite the NLC's outward confidence, the new regime remained on edge. Nkrumah, from his exile in Guinea, denounced the military junta and vowed to return to power. Through 1966 and into early 1967, there were rumors and reports that die-hard Nkrumahists were plotting revenge. Some of Kotoka's colleagues urged him to take these threats seriously, but the general was somewhat dismissive of warnings that a counter-coup was in the making, believing that the NLC had sufficient support and that any mutiny could be easily crushed. This confidence would prove to be tragically misplaced. In the early hours of the 17th of April 1967, Ghana was shaken by an audacious attempt to overthrow the National Liberation Council. This plot, which the conspirators chillingly codenamed Operation Guitar Boy, was led primarily by junior officers of the Ghana Armed Forces. Lieutenant Samuel Arthur, Lieutenant Moses Yeboah, and Second Lieutenant Osei Poku emerged as the central ringleaders of the conspiracy. Arthur and Yeboah were junior officers in their 20s, and Osei Poku was so new to the army that he had graduated from the military academy only 5 months earlier. The plotters managed to secretly recruit about 119 soldiers from the 2nd Reconnaissance Squadron based in Ho, in the Volta region. This unit was equipped with weapons and armored cars. They also gained the tacit support of a few senior non-commissioned officers, notably Warrant Officer George Ofosu, who helped encourage troops to follow the lieutenant's lead. It was a daring gambit by men of relatively low rank, exploiting the element of surprise and discontent among some troops who felt left out of the post-coup spoils. The codename Guitar Boy had an interesting origin. It was taken from a popular West African highlife song by Nigerian musician Victor Uwaifo, in which a mythical mermaid gives a guitarist a magic guitar and urges him to play beautifully. The song had been a hit in Ghana, and the young officers fancied the name for their coup plot, perhaps believing their own escapade would become legend. In a grim footnote, the NLC regime would later ban Uwaifo's tune from the airwaves after the coup attempt, considering it subversive. The motivations behind the coup were a blend of political and personal ambitions. It is true that many within the rank-and-file Army and Air Force had been uneasy with the coup against Nkrumah and yearned to avenge his overthrow. However, Lieutenant Arthur's own statements suggest a more ego-driven motive. According to later testimony, Arthur bragged that he wanted to be the first lieutenant to have staged a successful military coup in Africa. Planning for Operation Guitar Boy took place in utmost secrecy over weeks, if not months. The conspirators knew they lacked the open support of high-ranking officers, so they concocted a bold deception. They led the soldiers under their command to believe that a broad, countrywide military uprising was underway, involving many units, not just their own. On the night of Sunday, April 16, 1967, under the pretext of a special training exercise near Ghana's border with Togo, Arthur secretly assembled over 100 soldiers from the Ho-based Recce Squadron. These men were made to understand that come morning, all the Ghana Armed Forces would rise to oust the NLC, and that their unit was simply spearheading a well-coordinated military-wide coup. By dawn, Arthur laid a ruthless blueprint for the regime change and called for the elimination of the entire NLC leadership and all senior officers of the armed forces. He then split his rebel force into 4 assault teams, each assigned to capture a vital location in Accra. One squad was tasked with seizing Ghana's international airport. Another was to take control of the Flagstaff House, the military headquarters. A third team targeted the Ghana Broadcasting House, and the fourth was directed at Christiansborg Castle, the seat of the government. Leading by example, Lieutenant Arthur personally led the detachment that stormed the national radio station. In the early confusion of that morning, Arthur's men overcame the small security detail at the broadcaster. Eager to declare victory, the lieutenant rushed to the microphone and announced over the radio that the NLC government had been successfully overthrown. This premature proclamation proved to be a critical mistake, as it alerted loyalist forces and the public that a coup was underway, while the outcome was still far from decided. Arthur's broadcast claimed that a revolutionary new regime was in control, but even as he spoke, fierce skirmishes were raging at the other target sites. At Christiansburg Castle, 2nd Lieutenant Osei Poku led a raiding party in an attempt to capture General Ankra and other council members. The attackers infiltrated the castle grounds amid sporadic gunfire. However, Ankra narrowly escaped their clutches by slipping out, reportedly climbing over a wall or through a side exit, and went into hiding as loyal troops converged to defend the castle. The rebels thus failed to nab the head of state, depriving them of a major bargaining chip. Meanwhile, some of the heaviest action unfolded around Flagstaff House and the nearby military installations, where General Kotoka was located that morning. There, Lieutenant Yabowa's squad attacked and broke through the defenses of the Army headquarters, with the intention of eliminating Kotoka and any senior officers present. A firefight erupted in the compound and nearby areas. Amid the chaos, Kotoka's personal bodyguard, Staff Sergeant Emmanuel Kotoka, fought desperately to protect his commander. But he was fatally shot in the scuffle, as were a few loyal soldiers trying to repel the attackers. General Kotoka found himself cornered. Accounts suggest that he tried to flee towards the airfield, which is adjacent to the military headquarters, once it became clear that his position was overrun. In the end, Kotoka was captured by Yabowa's men near Accra Airport. In an act of brutality, Yabowa personally murdered the unarmed Kotoka, later confessing at his court-martial that he first stabbed the general with a bayonet and then shot him repeatedly. By the time Kotoka's body was recovered, he had 10 bullet wounds and multiple stab injuries, a clear sign of overkill, driven by either rage or a desire to ensure the feared general was truly dead. It was approximately 7 a.m. when Emmanuel Kotoka, age 40, fell at the forecourt of Accra's airport in a pool of blood, becoming the only member of the NLC to be killed in the coup attempt. At the airport itself, fighting also took place. Rebel soldiers seized portions of the airport grounds, but they failed to secure complete control. One critical mishap for the plotters occurred when Lieutenant Arthur went to the armory of the 1st Reconnaissance Regiment to gather more weapons. The quartermaster on duty, Captain C.Y. Avavor, realized Arthur was part of an illegal uprising and refused to hand over the keys to the ammunition depot. Arthur did not hesitate. He shot Captain Avavor dead on the spot. This gunshot may have been one of the first clear signs to other officers that a rogue operation was in progress, and it cost the rebels a chance to rearm fully. Despite their initial gains, the coup plotters' window of success was extremely short-lived. By late morning on April 17th, loyal military units from other garrisons and police forces had mobilized to confront the mutineers. Crucially, many soldiers in Accra, upon hearing the radio announcement and gunfire, realized this was not a universally supported coup, but a rogue element. Units from Kema and other nearby camps moved in to restore order. Intense firefights broke out around the radio station and Flagstaff House as loyalist troops encircled the rebels. With General Ankra surviving and now coordinating a response, alongside Police Chief Harley and others, the loyalists had a clear command structure. By the end of the day, Operation Guitar Boy had collapsed, and all 3 coup leaders were taken into custody, alongside several soldiers. The immediate aftermath of the failed coup was marked by a mix of relief, grief, and punitive retribution. Ghana was stunned by the loss of General Kotoka, the man who had been instrumental in the 1966 coup and had become a symbol of the new order. Kotoka's funeral, held with full military honors, drew men and women from all walks of life who came to pay their respects. In the years following his death, Kotoka was officially honored as a national hero by the military government that he helped install. The most visible tribute came in 1969, when Ghana's largest airport, previously called Accra International Airport, was renamed Kotoka International Airport in his memory. A life-size bronze statue of Kotoka, clad in a military uniform, was erected at the spot in the airport's forecourt where he fell in battle during the 1967 coup attempt. On the other side of the ledger, swift and harsh justice was meted out to the coup plotters. During the televised court-martial in late April 1967, presided over by Air Vice Marshal Michael Otu, the gruesome details of the plot were laid bare. Evidence presented included the Operation Guitar Boy master plan document and eyewitness testimonies of the killings. Lieutenant Yeboah was unflinching in admitting his role as Kotoka's killer, reportedly boasting of how he had shot the general. Lieutenant Sam Arthur likewise was identified as having personally shot Captain Avivor for refusing to cooperate. Second Lieutenant Osei Poku, as the youngest and least experienced, seemed to play a somewhat lesser role, but he had still led armed men in attacking the seat of government. The verdict was never in doubt. In May 1967, the tribunal found the officers guilty of treason and murder. Lieutenant Arthur and Lieutenant Yeboah were sentenced to death. Not long after, they were publicly executed by firing squad at a military range in Teshi, Accra. Second Lieutenant Osei Poku was spared the death penalty due to his youth, but received a 30-year prison sentence. He would remain incarcerated for many years, eventually released in the late 1970s after a change of government. Warrant Officer George Ofosu and other enlisted men implicated in the plot were also tried. Some were imprisoned, and a few may have been dismissed from service, though the exact punishments for all subordinate participants were not widely publicized. The National Liberation Council reacted to the coup attempt by tightening security and cracking down on perceived dissidents. In the immediate wake of Kotoka's assassination, there were wholesale arrests of Nkrumah supporters and known CPP activists across the country. Though the investigation did not uncover evidence of direct involvement by the exiled Nkrumah, the junta used the opportunity to purge elements of society deemed sympathetic to the former president. In the longer term, Kotoka's death had profound effects on the NLC regime itself. His absence upset the balance of power within the NLC. Some historians argue that Kotoka had been a stabilizing influence, and once he was gone, the remaining leaders jostled more openly for importance, weakening their collective grip on power. General Ankra, the NLC chairman, would later face a credibility crisis and resign in 1969 amid a bribery scandal, and Brigadier Afrifa took over to steer the country to a planned return to civilian rule. Indeed, by late 1968, the junta had committed to hand over governance, and elections were held in August 1969, a timeline that some attribute partly to the shock and introspection that followed the Guitar Boy affair. In this sense, although the coup failed in its immediate aim, it indirectly contributed to the end of military rule by the NLC, as the surviving leaders sought to exit on their own terms before any further unrest could unseat them.